Good morning, everyone. Please do give us another minute. We are just waiting for some colleagues to hop off some calls and join us, but we will be starting in the next few seconds. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to each and every one of you joining us today, whether you are here in Africa or tuning in from around the world. I am Melissa Tsodetse, your host, and it is an absolute pleasure to welcome you to the Spark, Shift, and Succeed weekly edition, proudly brought to you by Unique Speaker Bureau International. Today is about more than just inspiration. It is about igniting possibility, transforming mindset, and accelerating real impact. Before we begin, I'd like to ground us with a simple but powerful thought. Growth is uncomfortable because you have never been there before. Growth stretches us. It asks us to let go of what is familiar and step into what is necessary. It challenges our thinking, our habits, and sometimes even our identity. For the next 30 minutes, this is your chance to pause, to listen deeply, and to ask yourself, what pillars am I building my growth on? It is my privilege to introduce a remarkable leader whose voice has inspired thousands, not only in boardrooms, but in communities, across airwaves, and through the pages of impactful books. Confidence Seleme is an award-winning author of more than 30 books on leadership, personal growth, and organizational development. He's also a regular contributor on national radio stations, SAFM and Power FM, where he translates complex behavioral concepts into practical insights for diverse audience. Confidence uses a storytelling approach that engages listeners and participants alike. He is known for his ability to connect meaningfully with people from varied backgrounds, helping organizations build cohesive, high-performing cultures. Today, he'll guide us through a conversation that sits at the heart of progress, the pillars of growth. Without further ado, please help me in welcoming the one and only Confidence.
Thank you, Melissa, for that introduction. In the olden days, they would say your check is in the mail. So thank you for that introduction. I truly appreciate it. Yes, so my topic for today is the pillars of growth, the pillars of growth. And I want to go straight into it. In my early 20s, I landed my first job as a copywriter in an ad agency, and I was earning about 4,000 to 5,000 rands, and my accommodation was about 2,500 rand, and I still needed to travel. I still needed to eat. I still needed clothing. So if you are doing the math, you understand the kind of situation that I was in. The Gen Zs say the math was not mathing, and indeed it was not mathing. And on a particular day, I was coming from work. I'm walking back to my accommodation, and as I'm walking on the street, I hear one of the street vendors shout, full chicken, 2 rand, full chicken, 2 rand. And I stop in my tracks and I start to do more of the maths, and I realize with the 10 rand that I've got in my pocket, I can buy 5 full chickens, which would mean that dinner for the month is sorted. And so I look back at this vendor to see this full chicken, 2 rand, and it turns out that he was selling boiled eggs. Yeah, full chicken, 2 rand. And, coming from a marketing background, I appreciated the tactic. But then years later, I started thinking more deeply about what he had said, full chicken, 2 rand. Because essentially what he was doing, he was calling something from its potential, but because it was being called from its potential, the value attached to it was not that much. Because a full chicken, if you go to one of the shops, it'll cost you maybe 80 to 100 rand. But he was saying full chicken, which means he's calling the egg by its potential. But without growth, you will continue to be called by your potential, but the value, the true value, will not be attached to you. So increased value is attached to growth, not potential growth. And for leaders, what does this mean? Just as the chicken plays a role in incubating the egg, leaders must provide the right environment for the growth. And one of the primary things that a chicken provides for the egg is warmth. In organizations, what does this represent? It represents psychological safety. Psychological safety. Because when people don't feel safe, one of the things that we do is we hide. So in an area or in an environment where there's no psychological safety, people will hide. What are they going to hide? They're going to hide their ideas. They're going to hide their opinions. They're going to hide even their mistakes. Because in such environments, mistakes are not seen as learning opportunities. They are seen as something that you're going to get decapitated for. So, as leaders, one of the primary things we need to do is create a warm space where there is psychological safety, where people feel comfortable enough to come to the fore with their ideas, come to the fore with their opinions, come to the fore even with their mistakes. There's a quote I love by the author Mel Robbins. She said, "Leaders bring the weather. Leaders bring the weather." So as leaders, we need to ask ourselves, what kind of weather are we bringing into the environment? What kind of temperature are we bringing into the environment? Is it one that is warm, that creates psychological safety, which then allows people to be free, which allows people to express themselves and bring their ideas forward? Or is it an environment where we are cold, where people feel I cannot talk to this person, where people feel if I express my opinion, I may be shut down, I may be belittled, and so forth. And it's very hard to warm up to a cold leader. It's hard to warm up to a cold leader. So one of the things that we primarily need to do as leaders is create an environment of warmth where there is that psychological safety. Also, we need to allow the hatching process to happen, because it's about empowerment. It's not about dependence. I was doing the research, and they say if a chick is helped out of the shell too early, it often cannot survive. Because what does the struggle do? The struggle helps to build strength. Even when you study trees, they say one of the things that makes trees strong, one of the things that enables trees to grow tall and become fruitful, is the winds that beat against it. So when a tree is growing, when it encounters wind, especially strong winds, beneath the soil, the roots start strengthening. They start developing at an even greater rate. So one of the things that we should do as leaders is allow the hatching process to happen. It's not about helping them with every single thing. It's about creating environment where even the struggles that they encounter are helping them to grow. So it's about that warmth, creating that psychological safety, but also allowing the hatching to happen, not creating an environment of dependence, but one of empowerment. Also, as leaders, we need to understand that we don't create potential, we release it. Every person already carries the ability, they already carry the identity, and they already carry the possibility within them to become the thing that they were created to become. As leaders, we can't make people what they are not. However, we can help them discover and develop themselves. So as I reiterate those 2 points, it's about warmth, and it's also about allowing the chick to hatch. So as we go into our pillars, our first pillar says growth must be desired. Growth must be desired. If there is no desire for growth, growth will not happen. The chick must desire to hatch. And I was thinking about desire and I asked myself, but where does desire come from? And interestingly enough, one of the places that desire comes from is from fatigue. When you are tired of going around the same mountain over and over again, to use the example, when you're tired of remaining in that shell, growth becomes then the catalyst for change, because a lot of times we think the way out of cycles is time. but time does not move you out of cycles. What creates that a movement from the cycle of going around the mountain over and over again is growth. So growth is the catalyst for change. Time, the passing of time does not guarantee growth, or it does not guarantee change, but growth is what becomes that catalyst that allows for the change to happen so that you can escape the particular sphere that you are in, where you feel trapped, where you feel like, this is not an environment that I want to be in. Or rather, even within that particular position that you may be in, that you feel, what, this kind of position that I'm in is not, I'm not performing at my optimum. I'm not performing at a level where I've got the potential to perform. So fatigue is one of those things that allow us to create that desire for growth. Number two is when we see others grow. When we see other people grow, one of the knee-jerk reactions as human beings is that we become jealous or envious. But seeing others grow should inspire us as opposed to making us jealous. If you are jealous of somebody or envious of their growth, what happens is that jealousy closes the door to learning, but inspiration opens the door to learning. Jealousy makes you furious, but inspiration makes you curious. And it's funny, we can ask the same question, but the tone will change what we are looking for. For example, when you see somebody succeeding, you can ask, why are they succeeding? Why are they succeeding? That's when you become jealous or envious. But when you are inspired, you'll ask the same question, but why are they succeeding? Which then leads you towards a different path. It leads you towards a path of becoming curious and questioning and saying, what traits are they exhibiting that allow them to succeed? What are the trails that they've been following that allow them to get to that particular place? So growth must be desired. So we said fatigue inspires growth. Seeing others grow inspires growth, but also an inner awareness of your true potential. When you feel that you are made for more than your current level, when you feel that you are made for more than what you're currently doing. I stated earlier that I started my career in the ad industry, but within my tenure within the industry, I always felt that I'm created for more than what I'm doing right now. And that led me towards a path of writing books, of going, speaking to organizations, of speaking to communities, of joining different organizations which were more aligned to my plan and purpose for my life. So that first pillar says growth must be desired. Number two, growth must be defined. There's a quote by Les Brown that I love. He says, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it 100% of the time. So, whether in our personal lives, professional lives, or even at organizational level, we have to define what growth looks like, to us. And with vision must be both aspirational, but it must be attainable. Because if the target is too low, it will not inspire us, it will not stretch us. And if the target is too high, it can paralyze us and leave us feeling a little bit despondent. But where is that sweet spot? That sweet spot is when the vision excites us, but also intimidates us at the same time. To share a personal story again, in 2015, I set a target to write 20 books by the year 2020. At the time, I'd written 2 books. And what I realized is that as you build the vision also builds you. Because what it meant is that I had to grow beyond where I was at that particular moment. It meant that I had to read a lot wider. It meant that I had to think a lot deeper. It meant that I had to become a lot more creative, because creating that volume of content meant that I had to grow as an individual. And as I was building my vision was also building me. So the vision must be something that is exciting but also intimidating. It needs those two elements. That's the sweet spot that we need to find. But also the vision must be connected to capacity and gifts. I like what Albert Einstein said. He said, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. So the vision that we have, it must be connected to capacity and gifts within our particular environment. Because as Einstein said, everybody is a genius. There is genius within all of us. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. Also, the vision must be articulated, then circulated. It is articulated so that it's understood by all. One of the mistakes that a lot of organizations make is that we want to become very fancy when articulating our vision, when articulating the goals. But the purpose of articulation is not so that it's complex and it sounds beautiful. It's there for the purpose of simplifying it to a level where even your most junior staff can understand it. Because once people understand it, they can run with it. And that brings us to our second point. It must be articulated, but then it must also be circulated. Why do you circulate it? We circulate it so that we can get buy-in from our people. Because it is only when we get buy-in, when all hands are on deck, then we can run together as an organization, run together as a team. So vision must be articulated, then it must be circulated. Our third pillar, it says growth must be designed. Growth must be designed. And the question to us there is, how are we going to get there? And designing requires two primary elements. One is creativity. Creativity because there's always more than one way of getting to a particular destination. But number two is enabling systems. Enabling systems. I'll take you back to my journey of writing my books. What it required is creativity, but it also required a system. When I was sitting there in 2015, I said to get to that particular vision by 2020, I had to become mathematical, I had to become systematic. And what I did some calculations and I realized that in order to write those number of books, I needed to write a minimum of 500 words per day. So there was creativity because I needed to ideate, I needed to research, I needed to do a whole lot of work, but also there needed to be a system in place that allows for that vision to be achieved. So there's an African proverb I love. It says, "How do you eat an elephant?" And the answer is one bite at a time. So in your organization, you have to ask yourself, what daily milestones need to be achieved in order to achieve the vision? Because a lot of times it's not about the giant leaps that are taken once in a while. It's about the steps that you take on a regular basis. That consistency is key. It's not about the giant leaps taken once in a while. It's about the steps that are taken on a regular basis. And the thing is, the giant leaps are exciting. The giant leaps are, we look forward to those. But the real results, they comes through the discipline of consistency, saying, what do I need to get done today in order to achieve that goal that we have for the end of the month or for the end of the year? So that's our third pillar. Growth must be designed. And then our fourth pillar, growth must be diagnosed. Growth must be diagnosed. As you well know, diagnose is a medical term. And human nature says we go to the doctor when something is wrong. And in many of our organizations, we often start diagnosing when we see high turnover, when we start seeing revenue fall, when we start seeing innovation overtaking us. And even when culture collapses and so forth. But we need to take a more proactive, preventative approach. When we catch the problem early, we're able to catch it before it catches us. To go back to our metaphor, a hen doesn't wait for an egg to fail. She monitors, adjusts, and protects, ensuring that life thrives. So that fourth pillar is growth must be diagnosed. And ultimately, we have to ask ourselves, who will our life feed? Who will our life feed? This is what growth is about. Because if you remain an egg, the egg can only feed one person, but the full chicken can feed an entire family. So growth is about deciding what kind of impact do we want to make in our families, what kind of impact do we want to make in our organizations, what kind of impact do we want to make in our communities. Because growth at the end of the day enables us to become more influential, and then we're able to build a lasting legacy. So the question that we need to ask ourselves ultimately is, who will our life feed, and what kind of impact do we want to make in our families, in our organizations, in our communities? And what will enable that is when we decide to grow. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Confidence. That was very insightful. I think we've taken a lot of pearls of wisdom from there, the pillars of growth. And I think your perspective reminds us that growth is not accidental. It is intentional, it's disciplined, and it's anchored in strong foundations. I do have a few comments in our chat. Paul just was reiterating what you said. Be inspired by other people's growth and be curious and not resentful. Great sentiments and not always easy to implement. I completely agree with you there, Paul. I think I'm reminded by the African philosophy, lift others as you rise. So I love that thought, Confidence. I really do. We have something from Millicent. Millicent said, that is so profound, Confidence. There is a particular quote related to celebrating others. It says, until it's my turn, I will keep clapping for others. I love that, Millicent. I absolutely love that. And yes, a clap. I think we should all clap for others until it is our turn. It's good to celebrate momentum. It is good to celebrate our team's achievements because it helps us do better, as you said it. Confidence, I'm going to be a little bit stingy here. You said that growth must be desired. That was your first pillar. Because individuals face redundancy because we do get tired of soaring the same mountain. But I need to ask you a follow-up question from there. How can we maintain momentum and continue growing even when we are fatigued?
Well, a natural consequence of running, a natural consequence of climbing any mountain is fatigue. So fatigue should not be something that surprises us. We should actually factor fatigue into our plans, factor fatigue into our strategies. And the remedy to fatigue is rest. That's why it's always important to make sure that in whatever plan you have, it's not, even with a car that is mechanical, if you drive it at 200 kilometers per hour for 1,000 kilometers, you're going to have a problem. So fatigue is not something that we should shy away from. Fatigue is natural and expected, but we should create systems within our plans and our strategies that factor for fatigue, where we say, okay, this is how we refuel. This is how we rejuvenate. So fatigue is not something that we can get away from, especially if you're somebody who's desiring great things, if you're somebody who's going after certain visions and certain goals. Fatigue is going to come in, but you need to factor it in and create systems that allow rest and refueling.
Thank you so much, Confidence. I think that's so important because at the beginning of the year, people speak about beginning year burnout. At the end of the year, they're speaking about end year burnout. But we should definitely reassure ourselves that fatigue is part of the journey and we do need to be well rested enough to make those decisions, hit those targets, and continue to be empowered across. Paul summed it up nicely for us. 4 pillars: desired, defined, and designed and diagnosed. Thank you, Confidence. We all have strategies and visions we're trying to achieve in our own businesses, and this is so helpful. We do have a couple of minutes, let's say 6 minutes. So if you do have any questions, okay, there's a few comments in the chat, which I'll continue to quickly read. Tandy says, so glad I joined in today. Thanks, Confidence. Tandy, we're also very glad to have you. Thank you for joining. Zianda said, thank you for a wonderful session, Confidence. What a wonderful way to start the week. Yes, indeed, indeed. Always great way to start our Monday motivations. Paul has his hand raised up. Paul, please take the mic.
Oh, Confidence, just a quick one, there's a lot of us that are on the call that organize conferences, a lot of our customers, and, how would you help them to motivate their stakeholders in booking you for events? Well, what have you found in the past, when you've gone to seen various stakeholders out there and chatted to them? What do you find is the sweet spot for you? What do you really? What conferences have you been to that you've moved the needle and that you love? And I see there is another question in the group as well, but over to you.
Yeah, for me, I always try to be authentic as possible. Also, you need to read your audience, but people can sense authenticity, and all of us we can have similar messages, but we're not going to deliver them in the same way. And we've seen what other speakers are able to bring to the fore. But the primary for me is always authenticity, because I've got a particular story, but it's not just about my story. It's about how my story can impact your story. And so, whenever you book a speaker, you want that authenticity. And I believe it's something that I bring to the fore. I always bring my stories. I've got many, many stories all collected over the years. But what I've realized is that people connect to stories, because in every story, you find yourself within that particular story. So for me, it's about authenticity and bringing the kind of stories that are memorable. I mean, I'm sure from this call, nobody's going to forget full chicken, 2 rand. But immediately when you think full chicken, 2 rand, then you are able to remember almost the entire structure, because it's talking about increasing your growth, increasing your capacity, so that your value can grow. So that's what I bring to the table: authenticity, great storytelling, but also practical lessons that are usable within organizations and within teams.
Lovely. That's very well articulated. Thank you. And I sense a lot of anecdotal content as well, which our audiences generally absolutely love, because it's related to their conference. And you're right, it's how you get the message across that makes it stick. It's so important. After a conference, you want that sustainability to last. All right, brilliant. Thank you.
Thank
Melissa,
you.
that's a question there for you, Melissa.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for that, Paul. Very important for our audiences that are in conferences, always building better conferences ourselves. So that's a very important takeaway that we have. Be authentic. Your storytelling must be there. How do people remember you once a conference has ended? Confidence, thank you for that. And we do have a question from Millicent. Millicent says, Confidence, question for you, because you spoke about psychological safety. How can I effectively manage relationships with colleagues who have different work styles and personalities without compromising my own productivity?
Yeah, very good question. And for me, it takes us to empathy. Empathy, because they say that we all wear different size shoes, because empathy is about being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. But the issue with that is that we all wear different size shoes. So if I'm a size 9, it's not going to be easy for me to fit into your size 8. So walking in your shoes is not going to be easy, which means that I have to do internal work, whether it's shrinking, because now I'm a size 9, you're a size 8. I want to walk in your particular shoes. It means that I have to have the emotional intelligence to shrink and say, you know what, I need to understand your particular perspective. Sometimes it's somebody who's wearing a size 11 and I'm a size 9, which means I need to stretch. So it's about building your level of emotional intelligence and say, you know what, in what way can I shrink or can I stretch in order to relate with this person in a way that will make them understand them a little bit better. So it's about building that empathy, building that emotional intelligence. And once you do that, you're able to shrink and stretch in a manner that allows you to relate with people on different levels.
Thank you, Confidence. That was absolutely phenomenal. I do think it's very, very important to be empathetic, because if we're not empathetic, we won't understand each other's views. Paul articulated that empathy is one of our 6 values at USBI. Could not agree more with what you're saying, Confidence. Absolutely. I think it is important to be emotionally intelligent, to shrink or stretch. Word, Confidence. Thank you. Thanks, Millicent. Thanks for that again. Let me go back into the chat. We have a minute or so. Everyone is saying thank you for the insightful presentation. And Nomfundo said, wow, never thought of fatigue that way. Thanks, Confidence. Oh, new learnings every day. Wonderful, wonderful. I think we have come to a close, but I think to everybody listening today, here is the takeaway. Growth doesn't just happen in moments of inspiration. It happens when we identify the pillars that matter most, align them with our goals, and consistently act on them. Confidence, thank you, because we get to ask ourselves, which pillar am I neglecting? Am I neglecting psychological safety, emotional intelligence? What am I neglecting? What habit or mindset can I strengthen today that will compound into measurable growth tomorrow? With that said, we have come to the end of our session today. Powerful lessons, beautiful pearls of wisdom, and life-changing advice. Next week, we get to experience the same impact with you right here with Nick Johnson, a global keynote TEDx speaker, master coach, best-selling author of Executive Loneliness, and he will be speaking on the topic From Rock Bottom to Reconnection. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being our audience. You make a great audience, and we're looking forward for you to join us next week at 9 a.m. South African time, and we will be in touch with more information. Confidence, thank you once again for joining us, and looking forward to working with you again.
Wonderful. Looking forward to working with the team. Thank you for the opportunity. Cheers.
Thank you, Confidence. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.